The day before the wedding, my sister Emily locked me in the changing room. Then a dozen men suddenly rushed in. When I was carried out, I was covered in blood. My fiancé publicly accused me. He even kissed my sister. They held a ceremony with her. Guests surrounded me taking pictures. Mobile phone cameras were pointed at my face. Only my childhood friend, Lucas, rushed over. He picked me up and took me to the hospital. I was saved, but the baby in my belly was lost. The day I was discharged, I jumped off the hospital rooftop. Lucas desperately saved me. He kissed the tears off my face. He took out a diamond ring worth millions and proposed to me. He also said he fell in love with me when we were young. So I married Lucas. 3 years of marriage. His needs in that area are very high. Everywhere in our villa, there are traces of us together. The doctor said my injuries haven't healed. He is worried it will hurt me. So even if it's hard to bear, he still doesn't want me to undergo the final treatment. Until I accidentally overheard the doctor talking to him. The doctor said, "Lucas, the lady's uterus has recovered. It can be transplanted to Miss Emily now." That's great. With a healthy uterus, Emily can have a child for the Anderson family. Lucas, don't you plan to think it over again? The lady has lost her uterus. She will never be able to have children again. I have no other thoughts. As long as Emily can live steadily in the Anderson family, even if she can't have children afterward, I have no complaints. I felt a chill, like being splashed with a bucket of cold water. It turns out he saved my life to give Emily a healthy uterus. In that case, I will no longer cling to this false love system. Help me leave this world in the study. The doctor is still trying to persuade. Lucas, the organ bank just received a uterus yesterday. It matches Miss Emily perfectly. How about it? Lucas immediately refused. How can we transplant something of unknown origin to Emily? Who knows what that lady's private life is like? Moreover, the ideal outcome for uterus transplants is between blood relatives. Jessica is Emily's sister. Only her body is particularly suitable for Emily. Can the special potion that lady drinks every day be stopped? After all, while this medicine is beneficial for the uterus, its effects on other organs are too great. It's okay. She can endure it. Not only can it not be stopped, but the dosage must be increased tenfold. We must ensure the uterus is in optimal condition before the surgery. Once the surgery is successful, I will definitely take good care of Jessica. After all, Emily will also be using her uterus. I plan to take care of her for a lifetime. It's like accumulating virtue for Emily. I covered my mouth. I staggered out. I headed straight to the hospital. The moment I received the test results, my mood instantly sank to the lowest point. The test results showed, besides my ovaries and uterus, my body had multiple organs that were failing. Ever since I married Lucas, my health has never been good. He has consulted many famous doctors for my checkups. The final conclusion was, the symptoms I have now are all aftereffects of previous experiences. I need special medication to recover. Lucas is very concerned about this. No matter how busy he is, he comes home every day to personally make me take my medicine, to prevent me from getting hurt again. Although he is very gentle with me, he is still unwilling to take that final step. What he is doing is actually to leave Emily with a healthy uterus. Outside the hospital, I tore up the test results and threw them in the trash can. I whispered to myself, "System, I want to leave this world." There was a moment of silence. A cold, mechanical voice echoed in my mind. "Your application has been received because your mother previously gave up an opportunity to leave, so you can freely choose how to leave." I remembered Lucas saying he would take care of me for a lifetime, to accumulate blessings for Emily. I couldn't help but smile bitterly. I choose to leave at the moment the transplant surgery ends. To leave in front of Lucas. When I returned to the villa, as soon as I opened the door, I was embraced by a warm hug. "Baby, why did you come back so late? I missed you." Lucas rested his chin on my shoulder. His gaze was gentle. The servant brought over the prepared medicine. He picked up a spoon, preparing to feed me the medicine. "Baby, didn't you always say the medicine is bitter?" I had the doctor change the formula a bit. I added the gardenia flower nectar you like. "Smell it. Doesn't it have a sweet fragrance?" His tone is still very gentle, but I understand in my heart. The sweetness of gardenia nectar is just used to cover up the heavy bitterness. I didn't act spoiled to avoid taking medicine like before. Instead, I held the bowl and drank the medicine cleanly. Lucas gently touched my hair. So good. He unwrapped the candy and put it in his mouth. Leaning down, he gently bit my lip. He fed me the candy. There was a bit of sweetness on my tongue. but I still couldn't help but feel bitterness in my heart. Jessica is being so good today. Your husband will reward you well tonight. He leaned close to my ear. His eyes revealed some desire. I asked the doctor today. Your body has mostly recovered. Just wait a few more days. Then we can, snap. The bowl in my hand dropped. It shattered all over the floor. I pushed him away, bending over, feeling like vomiting. He stood there in a daze. His complexion turned pale. Jessica, what are you doing? Who allowed you to spit out the medicine, seeing the medicine on the ground? His gaze was as cold as ice. After a while, have the servant bring up the remaining medicine residue. I felt something was off, trying to escape but was pulled back. As a result, a handful of medicine residue was stuffed into my mouth. Jessica, hurry up and finish the medicine. Don't waste it. His tone was very firm. I struggled desperately, but was still forced to swallow most of the medicine until the medicine scratched my throat. The blood I coughed up stained the cuffs of his shirt red. He was momentarily stunned, as if he suddenly realized something. He let go of me. There was a hint of wavering in his previously calm gaze. Jessica, I didn't mean to. I'm worried that you won't take your medicine. The recovery isn't going well. He gently cupped my face. His thumb wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth. A hint of guilt appeared in his eyes. I'm sorry. It's my fault for being too anxious. You don't like taking medicine. Are you not going to take it anymore? I lowered my head. No answer. I've been on medication for a full 3 years. His newfound softness can't change how I feel inside. By evening, Lucas naturally leaned closer to me. His hand slid into my nightgown. His hot breath brushed against my neck. Still angry. I'm doing this for your own good. How can your body get better if you don't take your medicine? How can your body recover? Did I scare you today? Your husband will make it up to you. He was really forceful. I couldn't push him away at all. I'm like a ship drifting in the ocean, rising and falling in the turbulent waves, gradually losing consciousness. A long time passed. I suddenly heard Lucas talking to someone. Dr. Smith. Don't give Jessica any more medication. She will throw up. Then just give her a direct Roman 4. The cold needle pierced my vein. A chill instantly spread throughout my body. The next day, I woke up. There were unread messages from Lucas on my phone. Jessica, I'm going to meet a client. The driver will take you to your mother's birthday banquet tonight. Yesterday was my fault, so I bought you a new necklace as an apology. At that moment, the servant brought in a sapphire necklace. I recognized it. It was exactly the one I casually admired a few days ago while browsing the auction website. Lucas often does this, whenever I linger over high heels or the new lipstick in my shopping cart. A few days later, these things will appear before me. I used to think he cared about me. Now I understand. These were actually the costs I had to pay in advance. Before setting off, I took a box out of the wardrobe and handed it to the servant. On the day of my wedding anniversary with Lucas next month, you can give this to him. The servant asked with a bit of confusion. Why didn't the lady personally give the item to Lucas? I'm not going to be here next month. This isn't anything precious. It's something Lucas gave me before. You can return it to him for me. The banquet is held at Lucas's family's hotel. As soon as I arrived, I became the center of attention. Someone said, that's really quite shameless. The photos have spread around, and yet she can appear so calmly. Someone who cheated at the wedding. How can she still have the face to show up? I didn't want to pay attention to their gossip. I just walked up to Lucas's mother. I handed her the gift I had prepared. Lucas's mom disdainfully pushed my hand away. What are you doing here? Lucas's family doesn't welcome you. Lucas's sister, Sophia, ran over. She sharply questioned the waiter who brought me in. How did you train them? How could someone like her be allowed into the banquet hall? What benefits did she give you to make you agree to go with her? Everyone couldn't help but laugh. The discussions became even more fervent than before. I had heard that Jessica's hobbies were a bit unusual. It turns out I was right. It is indeed a bit strange. She was pregnant on her wedding day, and she ended up in the hospital for rescue with so many people. No wonder she hasn't gotten pregnant after 3 years of marrying into the Lucas family. It turns out she did not want to have children, but rather her body couldn't handle it. What a joke. Would the Lucas family recognize her child? Who knows whose child it really is? The people around me stared at me with mocking eyes. It feels like the same invisible pressure from 3 years ago has returned. I'm trying to stay calm, just about to leave. Suddenly, I see Lucas. He is standing at the edge of the crowd. I don't know how long he has been here. He is talking to Emily beside him, with his head down. Emily is laughing happily. Then she tiptoes and whispers something in Lucas's ear. The two turn and leave. Lucas, I want to chase after them, but someone behind me grabs my hair. I fall to the ground. My brother has lost so much face because of me. How dare you mention his name? I really want you to shut up. A high heel stomped hard on my mouth. I screamed in pain. Sophia is laughing at me from the side. It's really strange. To be treated like this and still be able to scream. I struggle to look towards the door, but Lucas is already gone. I know in my heart. He must have heard it. There's blood. Someone gasped. Blood kept flowing from the mouth. The carpet was stained red as well. Lucas's mother looked pale. Let someone throw me outside. I felt cold raindrops falling on my face. I staggered out, but I went the wrong way. I entered the depths of the hotel garden. Sounds of a man and a woman came from ahead. I was just about to back away when I heard Emily's delicate voice say, "Brother-in-law, why are you so distracted today? Are you worried about sister?" The rainy night was as bright as day. Lucas leaned Emily against a tree. He kissed her passionately. I wouldn't feel sorry for her. I'm just worried that Sophia might ruin her. It could affect the surgery the day after tomorrow. And don't call me brother-in-law. I prefer you to call me Brother Lucas. Emily gently stroked his face. You and your sister, when you were together. Does she also call you Brother Lucas, Emily? Didn't I tell you before? I really didn't have anything with her. HMPH, I don't believe it. She never took the initiative to approach you. Lucas's movement paused for a moment. Emily looked displeased. I knew it long ago. You fell in love with her. Both of you like that sister. No one cares about me. Lucas, don't forget, those dozen boys were all chosen by you back then. Now you say you like her. Doesn't that seem a bit ridiculous? The air suddenly became quiet. I was stunned. My mind went blank. There was no sound around. Only a harsh buzzing echoed in my mind. Lucas's face turned very pale. Emily's eyes were red, looking at him with disappointment. Have you forgotten? Brother Lucas, you have been monitoring to catch Anderson and them. You were always watching. You once called Jessica the worst woman in the world. You said whoever marries her will be unfortunate. It has only been 2 years, and now your heart is drawn to her. Lucas seemed to think of an uncomfortable image. He closed his eyes and shook his head, as if trying to drive those images out of his mind. Emily, I haven't fallen in love with her. She is just a tool for me to vent my emotions. If I could see you every day, I wouldn't even take a second glance at her. And don't worry, I have never truly been with her. I won't let these matters delay the transplant surgery. He thought for a moment and added, besides, she has so many people around her. I'm afraid of infection too. Emily lowered her head. She let out a gentle sigh. Brother Lucas, I believe in you. Don't think I'm narrow-minded. I've just been bullied by my sister since I was little, so I have some grievances inside. Emily, you saved my life. This makes me grateful to you. Don't say it's Jessica's womb, even if it's my life. I will give you anything you need. I will give you everything. Emily was so moved that she pressed her face against his chest. Brother Lucas, thank you for everything you've done for me. I have an idea. After the womb transplant, I will have a child for you. Lucas asked in disbelief. Emily, are you really serious? Emily nodded firmly. Of course I am serious. You've done so much for me. Of course I don't want to disappoint you. The Lucas family cannot be without an heir. After all, it's my sister's womb being used. Then let's just say my sister is helping to give birth. Brother Lucas, come find me later. There's no need to worry. She hadn't finished speaking when she was interrupted by Lucas's kiss. Then I only heard a series of soft responses. I clenched my fists tightly. My nails were almost digging into my flesh, but I didn't feel any pain. My heart was numb from the pain. I didn't call the driver to pick me up. Instead, I walked alone on the road. The rain gradually got heavier. The high heels I was wearing were already soaked and soft. With every step, I swayed a bit. I didn't even know how long I had been walking, and I had no idea where to go. I remembered 3 years ago. It was also raining heavily that day. Lucas took off his coat and wrapped it around me. Then he carried me into the rain. The rain soaked his hair and eyelashes. He anxiously called my name. Jessica, don't worry, we're almost at the hospital. Don't close your eyes. Jessica, isn't that Lucas's wife? Why did she faint by the roadside? Quick, call Lucas. Dr. Smith, Jessica has fainted. Will this affect the transplant surgery in the midst of chaos? A cold, mechanical voice suddenly rang in my ears. There are 30 minutes left until the host leaves this world. I suddenly opened my eyes. Bright lights shone down on me. Jessica, how did you wake up? Lucas, in a sterile gown, was startled. He solemnly asked the doctor beside him, what happened? Did the anesthesia not work? The anesthesiologist was also taken aback. Cold sweat began to form on my forehead. They quickly increased the dosage of the anesthesia. I struggled to turn my head to the side. Sure enough, I saw someone lying on another operating table. It's Emily. Lucas blocked my view. He held my hand tightly. Her face is full of worry. Jessica, you're so foolish. You didn't even call me when you were bullied at the party. My body was cut open by a surgical knife. The pain is excruciating. I opened my mouth to say something, but tears have already fallen. The person who hurt me. It's you. Lucas, Jessica, there's something I must tell you. You were in a serious car accident. The doctor said this might affect your ability to have children in the future. But don't worry. No matter if you can have children or not, you will always be my wife. Looking at the face I have loved deeply for 3 years, I want to speak, but in the end, I'm left speechless. Seeing me with my eyes closed, not moving anymore, Lucas quietly asked Dr. Smith if I wake up, will the surgery still be affected? No, it won't. Dr. Smith paused and said, the anesthesia just wore off. The lady must be in a lot of pain. Lucas held my hand tightly. It's okay as long as it hurts a little. The main thing is that the surgery shouldn't be affected. Time passed little by little. The system started the countdown in my ear. 10, 9, 8. The surgery was successful, as Dr. Smith said that. There was a warm round of applause in the operating room. Lucas breathed a sigh of relief. He personally pushed Emily's bed out of the operating room. At that moment, a sudden piercing sound from the machine rang out. Lucas stopped in his tracks. He turned back in surprise. When he saw the flat line on the ECG monitor, his face instantly turned pale. His eyes widened in shock. Jessica. Lucas hurried to Jessica's bedside. He called her name several times, seeing the woman on the bed with her eyes closed. There was no response. He was sweating with anxiety. Dr. Smith. What's wrong with Jessica? Is there a problem with the equipment? Why is it showing a straight line? Dr. Smith's complexion also worsened. He asked Lucas to step outside. Several medical staff were nervously performing CPR. Outside the operating room, Lucas was pacing back and forth. He was extremely anxious inside. Every second felt like torture. An assistant hurried over to find him. Lucas, Miss Emily has woken up. She wants to see you. He paused for a moment. His brow furrowed slightly. I'll go in a bit. What does she need? You just give her what she wants. Not long after, the assistant came again. Lucas, Miss Emily said she wants to see you. She can't eat anything without seeing you. He felt somewhat irritated. In the past, whenever Emily said she missed him, he would feel a rush of blood to his head. He desperately wanted to go accompany her right away. He wanted to hold her warm body tightly in his arms. But right now, he just felt very annoyed. He restrained his emotions and said, tell her I'm very busy right now. I will definitely go see her once I'm done. By the way, send her that 52-carat diamond ring. That diamond ring was the one Emily picked out at first sight when he bought this ring. He also bought a sapphire necklace as a side purchase. Every time he gave Emily a gift, he would also bring a gift for Jessica, although her gift was far less valuable than Emily's. But still, he was officially Jessica's husband. These formalities had to be taken care of. Not long after, the assistant rushed in again, with a clear handprint visible on his face. Lucas, you should go see Miss Emily quickly. She threw a huge tantrum. She said she felt dizzy and wanted to vomit. She wants Dr. Smith to take a look at her. Lucas's expression became very serious. His brows were tightly furrowed. His tone was cold. Dr. Smith was resuscitating a patient. No one could disturb him. He looked at the handprint on his assistant's face. He let out a few cold laughs. He really felt dizzy and nauseous. How could he still have the strength to hit someone? This was the first time the assistant saw Lucas angry at Emily, but she didn't dare to speak ill of Emily. Everyone knew how much Lucas cared for Emily. She could only cautiously step back. Lucas looked up at the lights in the operating room. He suddenly thought of the time 3 years ago when he sent Jessica to the ICU. He had also waited outside the operating room like this. His mood. It was surprisingly just as anxious. In fact, he disliked Jessica quite a bit back then. He felt she had bullied Emily since childhood. She often left bruises on Emily's body. Emily cried every day and was very sad. He was also particularly angry when the Anderson families were to be united. Jessica openly competed with Emily for Anderson. Clearly, Emily liked Anderson first, but Jessica captivated Anderson. As a result, the two even had a child. Those days, Emily was so heartbroken that she couldn't eat. Strangely enough, When he saw Jessica being bullied on the monitor, he felt a great pang in his heart. According to the previous plan, he picked up Jessica and rushed to the hospital, but he found her entire body was hot. She had already burned to the point of delirium. She felt so weak, as if she were about to faint. It was raining heavily that day. He instinctively wrapped his coat tighter. He wanted to shield the woman in his arms from the rain. As they were nearing the hospital, suddenly, someone tugged at his clothes. He was taken aback. Looking down, it was Jessica waking up. She was looking at him weakly. He felt a bit flustered. Before he could say anything, Jessica coughed up blood. She opened her mouth to speak, but her throat was hoarse. Her voice was too soft to hear clearly. He leaned in closer. Finally, he heard what she had to say. She said, "Thank you," seeing her lips scarred and battered. He couldn't help but feel a surge of irritation. This woman is really too foolish. She just gets beaten and scolded by Emily, and now she comes to play the victim. Just as Emily said, Jessica is the best at attracting men. Later, when Emily curiously asked him about his reaction when seeing Jessica with those people, he couldn't help but say, "She's really gone too far. She has no sense of shame at all. Being surrounded by so many people and still shouting so loudly. Any other girl would have had enough by now. How could I possibly have feelings for her? She's already been completely played out." The lights in the operating room went out. Lucas's heart tightened. It felt like waiting for some sort of result. This can't possibly go wrong. There have been quite a few successful cases of uterine transplant surgeries. Although Jessica's body is relatively weak, it doesn't mean she would lose her life from just one surgery. She was more seriously injured 3 years ago. There was hardly a spot on her body that was intact. Yet she still managed to survive, didn't she? He began to overthink. He didn't know how long he had been thinking, only to realize that Dr. Smith was already standing in front of him. "Lucas, you should take care of yourself." "How is that possible?" Lucas's eyes widened. He didn't want to hear any empty words about taking care of himself. He just wanted to know if Jessica was safe. He was like an angry lion. He grabbed Dr. Smith by the collar. Grinding his teeth, he asked, "What on earth is going on? Wasn't it said there would definitely be no problems? Is it because of your operational error that caused something to happen to Jessica?" Faced with his anger, Dr. Smith did not feel afraid. He adjusted his glasses and spoke slowly. "Lucas, you seem to have forgotten what happened back then, when we signed the contract 3 years ago. I did say that the results would be good, but you only requested that Miss Emily have no scars after the surgery and that she could recover quickly. It should not be discovered by young Master Anderson. However, I didn't mention the need to guarantee the lady's absolute safety. The cause of the lady's death was organ failure. As for why this happened, I believe you know better than anyone. I have reminded you multiple times. Do not frequently increase the dosage of the medication, and absolutely do not inject it directly into the vein. This is what you requested, emphasizing that the uterus must be prioritized. I was just following your instructions. Is there a problem?" Every time he says this, Lucas feels increasingly nervous. In the end, he trembled and let go of Dr. Smith. He couldn't rebut a single word. After a while, he weakly stepped back a few paces. Stumbling, he rushed into the operating room. Dr. Smith adjusted his wrinkled clothes. The expression in his eyes turned somewhat gloomy. He wasn't worried about how Lucas would treat him. After all, his family background is quite substantial. Moreover, the terms were clearly stated from the beginning. Even if there were any medical accidents, he also had the ability to handle compensation issues. What he was worried about was something else. Someone from the lab just sent him a message. Young Master Anderson was originally supposed to return to the country in 3 months. He didn't expect him to come back early. He is already on the plane now. If Anderson finds out that his wife Emily secretly underwent a uterine transplant, once the investigation goes deeper, it will definitely uncover the truth about Emily's damaged uterus. At that time, Anderson will be furious. Many people will surely be affected, Dr. Smith decided, before Anderson discovers the truth, to quickly take his team back to his lab in Canada, to avoid being implicated. After all, the Anderson family is not to be trifled with. Lucas rushed into the operating room. He saw the medical staff preparing to remove the equipment from Jessica. He immediately said loudly, "You can't take it off." He quickly walked to Jessica's side. He placed the ventilator mask back on her face. "Jessica, I know you pretended to faint to scare me because I forced you to take medicine the other day. I swear, from today on, you don't have to take medicine anymore. Is that okay, Jessica? Are you really asleep? I'm just tired. Or maybe I feel a bit uncomfortable after waking up from the anesthesia. Don't worry, I won't leave. I'll be here waiting for you to wake up. By the way, Jessica, did you want to say something to me just now? Open your eyes first. Finish what you want to say before going back to sleep. Is that okay? He kept rambling on. At that moment, a nearby medical staff member reminded him. Lucas, the patient's oxygen mask has no more moisture. This sentence completely shattered his illusions. He was instantly filled with rage. He punched the machine beside him. Who are you calling a patient? Jessica is not sick at all. You all need to leave. Get out, all of you. He was the only one left in the operating room. He held Jessica's already cold hand. Finally, tears flowed down. Emily was pushed in on a wheelchair. Brother Lucas, don't be sad. Although sister has passed away, there are risks in surgery. With just a slight mistake, it could have been me today. And because of her, both the Anderson and Lucas families can have heirs. I believe sister will surely be happy for us up in heaven. Usually, Lucas would nod in agreement immediately, but today, he remained silent for a long time. Then he looked up at Emily. A thought suddenly popped into his mind. It turns out that Emily and Jessica don't look alike at all in the 3 years of marrying Jessica. At first, he swore to remain faithful to Emily. He would never touch Jessica, but later on, for some reason, he couldn't help but want to be close to Jessica. So he thought, maybe it's because they are half-sisters, they look alike. So whenever he saw Jessica, he couldn't control his impulses. But today, he suddenly realized they really don't look alike at all. Emily has an oval face, thin lips, a pair of slightly upturned almond-shaped eyes. She looks a bit sharp, while Jessica has a round face. Her facial features are softer. Her gaze is also gentler. It seems capable of embracing all grievances. He once asked her, "Can you really forgive your fiancé for being with your sister?" She was silent for a moment. Then she smiled slightly. She looked at him with affection. "Don't I already have you? Except for Mom, you are the best person to me in this world, being with you. I won't think about the past anymore." Lucas recalled her gentle and bright eyes at that time. A wave of sadness surged in his heart. He wished time could freeze at that moment. So, he gave up on the transplant plan. He decided to go back to the organ bank to find a donor for Emily. As long as he takes good care of Emily, he could leave this place with Jessica to travel around the world. Jessica actually doesn't need to be on the operating table. It's all because of him. He covered his head with his hands. He cried out in pain softly. Emily was a bit surprised, so she let the person pushing her go. She shook the wheelchair and moved closer. She wanted to comfort him. "Lucas, brother, don't be sad, you still have me and me." I didn't expect Lucas to push her away immediately. He said through gritted teeth, "My wife is still here. Mrs. Anderson, please watch your words." Emily's face instantly turned pale. She endured and endured. Struggling to suppress the anger within her, she asked in a low voice, "So, are you regretting it? I really regret lending you my wife's uterus. Well then, I will go find Dr. Smith right now to have him take the uterus back. However, I hope you remember, my injury led to my inability to conceive. It's all because of whom I was injured by the kidnappers." She struggled to turn her wheelchair and leave, leaving only Lucas with a determined silhouette. Lucas was taken aback for a moment. He muttered to himself, "If I had known the price of salvation was to pay with Jessica's life, it would have been better to let me die back then." When he was young, he accidentally caught the attention of the kidnappers. The kidnappers locked him in a dilapidated little house. They planned to finish him off after getting the ransom. He prepared to wait for death. Unexpectedly, a little girl holding a notebook rushed in. He asked the girl to help call the police, but the brave girl chose to stay. She helped him untie the ropes binding his hands and feet. The ropes were tied very tightly. The girl even bit them with her teeth. She bled a lot from her mouth. In the end, she finally managed to loosen the bindings. He used the handkerchief he carried to wipe the girl's blood. Before they could escape, the kidnappers suddenly returned. The little girl threw herself at the feet of the two kidnappers. She desperately urged them to run away quickly. At that moment, he could only escape first. Fortunately, he soon encountered the police who had come after them. When he returned to the abandoned little house, the two kidnappers had already fled. They had taken their anger out on the little girl before leaving. They had injured her. The subsequent matters were handled by the adults. He quickly moved from the capital to the coastal city with his parents. He never saw that little girl again. He only remembers. The name on the little girl's notebook was Emily, until he was a teenager. New neighbors moved into the villa next to his house. He was surprised to find that one of their 2 daughters was also named Emily. He quietly found Emily. Sure enough, she still remembered that kidnapping incident. From that moment on, he was determined to cherish her for a lifetime. He always thought no one could make his heart race except Emily, especially that mean woman who always bullied her. Now he understands. Actually, he doesn't know when it started. He had already fallen deeply in love with Jessica. Unfortunately, by the time he realized this, Jessica had already closed her eyes forever. She could no longer smile at him. At this moment, the assistant hurriedly ran in. Lucas. Miss Emily cut herself with a knife. She has already drawn blood. You should go and talk to her. Lucas feels uneasy, but he doesn't want to leave. He's afraid something might really happen to Emily. He bent down and gently kissed Jessica's pale face. Jessica, wait for me a moment. I'll be back soon. He arrived at the ward. The scene was extremely chaotic. Emily was waving the knife in her hand. No one was allowed to come near. Her face was streaked with tears. She looked very pitiful. But Lucas recalled the day he forced Jessica to swallow the drug residue. She was crying and vomiting. Tears and blood dripped onto the ground. At that time, he really felt heartbroken. But it was as if he was under a spell. He still didn't give up on this ridiculous plan. He smiled bitterly. It turned out that heaven had given him so many opportunities. Yet he still pushed the woman he loved towards despair. Little by little, Emily screamed in pain. Brother Lucas, I should have understood earlier. No one in this world truly cares about me. Everyone only likes my sister. I used to think you would be different. I didn't expect this was just me being overly sentimental. I don't want my sister's baby. I'm willing to give it back to her, if you want me to die for her. Me too. She cried uncontrollably. The people around her noticed. They quickly stepped forward to take the knife from her hand. Lucas felt very tired. Jessica is different. She wouldn't make a scene, nor would she take things from him for granted. She is always gentle and considerate every time he gave her a gift. Even if it was something very small, she would be happy for several days. At that time, he was still mocking her for not having seen anything good. He thought Anderson was just having fun with her. Otherwise, how could it be possible not to give even a decent gift? Now, he wants to give her all the good things in the world. But in return, he cannot get her to smile at him. All right, Emily, stop being unreasonable. You just had surgery. It's better to rest well. Lucas ignores the resentment in Emily's eyes. He turns around and leaves. Just as he steps out of the ward, he encounters an unexpected person, Anderson. Emily is even more surprised than he is. She can't help but exclaim. She quickly calms down. She softly asks, Anderson, did you rush back because of my car accident? I just had surgery, although it still hurts a bit, but it will be fine soon. You don't need to worry about me. Lucas remains silent beside her, but inside he is tumultuous. How could Anderson return at this time? She clearly knows. He will only come back in 3 months. By then, he will cooperate with Dr. Smith's special medication. Emily's body will have almost recovered. The wounds can also be attributed to the appendectomy, but he is back now. He really messed up my plans. Lucas was thinking about how to explain or conceal the uterine transplant to Anderson. Unexpectedly, Anderson coldly scanned the entire ward. His gaze swept past Emily, finally resting on Lucas's face. Where is Jessica? What? Lucas was stunned. He didn't expect that the first thing he would ask was about Jessica. Anderson gave a cold smile and said, Are you playing dumb? Your family, the Lucases, bullied Jessica at the old woman's birthday party and publicly humiliated her. You can't deny that, can you? I have already investigated the matter from 3 years ago. That day, Jessica was actually framed. My people are currently investigating the mastermind behind this. I originally planned to deal with it after returning to the country. I didn't expect your Lucas family to use this matter to embarrass her in public. That's why I hurried back. As soon as the truth is revealed, I will hold a press conference to clarify things for Jessica. Right now, take me to see Jessica. I have something important to discuss with her. Lucas heard Anderson mention investigating the incident from 3 years ago. Almost couldn't stand steady. I haven't even figured out how to respond yet. He then heard Anderson say he wanted to talk to Jessica about something important. He felt a bit uncomfortable. He said coldly, What important matter could you have with my wife? If you must say something, just tell me directly. Anderson glanced at him with disdain. He said with a sneer, What are you even? The Lucas family doesn't count for anything in front of me, Anderson. If it weren't for being misled 3 years ago, I wrongly accused Jessica. People like you don't deserve to be with my Jessica." Hearing him call her so affectionately, Lucas got angry. He swung a punch. "Shut up. Don't mention my wife's name." Anderson sidestepped. The bodyguards on both sides immediately blocked Lucas. "Lucas, are you crazy? You actually dare to lay a hand on me? Let me tell you, this time I came back. It's to divorce Emily and plan to remarry Jessica." "Anderson," Emily cried out in pain. "I won't divorce you. Let me tell you, you will never escape from me in this lifetime. As long as I'm alive, you belong to me, even in death. Then why don't you hurry up and die?" Anderson hit her angrily. "I'll ask you one more time. Where is Jessica?" Emily's head was knocked to one side. She slowly turned her face. She wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. Suddenly, she started to laugh. "What a pity. Your Jessica is no longer here." "Say that again. Who gave you the courage to say such things about Jessica?" Anderson angrily slapped her again. Emily shed tears, yet she still wore a mocking smile on her face. "Ha ha ha. No matter how many times you hit me, it's useless. The poor Jessica is already gone. If you want to blame someone, blame her bad luck. It was clearly a non-risky surgery, yet it took her life." Anderson's eyes burned with rage. He mercilessly slapped her a dozen more times. "What kind of surgery is this? Why did Jessica have to undergo surgery? You better speak up." Emily's face was severely swollen, but she still smiled. Lucas clenched his fists. He quietly left the hospital room. He knew that things could no longer be hidden. He must immediately go home to clean up the computer files in the study. The matter of the uterus transplant is easy to explain. After all, it's for the heir of the Anderson family. But if he finds out that 3 years ago, it was he who helped Emily plan it, then he and the Lucas family might get into trouble. As soon as he entered the house, someone came up to greet him. "Lucas, how is the lady?" Lucas actually didn't want to answer her, but he felt that this maid had been with Jessica for a long time, and Jessica had praised her before, so he felt a bit uncomfortable. He stopped and said to her, "The lady is no longer here, so soon." The maid misunderstood his meaning. She muttered to herself, "I thought the lady wouldn't leave until next month." "What next month? Did the lady tell you something?" He found it a bit strange. He hurriedly stopped the maid. "The lady handed me a box on the day of the birthday banquet. She said to give it to you on your wedding anniversary next month. I asked the lady why she didn't give it to you herself. She said she wouldn't be around next month." I remember the lady was acting a bit odd that day. It was clearly a gift for the anniversary, but she didn't say to give it to you. Instead, she said to return it to you." The servant recounted everything that happened that day. She handed the box to Lucas. Did she know all along? Lucas felt a tightness in his chest. He felt a bit panicked. He stood there frozen. After a long while, he hurriedly took the box. His hands trembled nervously. He accidentally dropped the box on the floor. A child's handkerchief fell out from inside. Lucas was stunned for a moment. He recognized the handkerchief. It was the one he gave to the little girl who once saved him when he was young. How could it be in Jessica's hands? He suddenly thought of something terrifying. No way, it can't be her. That's right. "Lucas, the lady also said this was a gift you gave her before." Lucas felt a sudden discomfort in his throat. His legs gave way. He collapsed directly to the ground when Anderson burst into Lucas's villa with his men. Lucas was still unconscious. A bucket of cold water was splashed on his face. Only then did he slowly wake up. I opened my eyes. I saw Lucas's mother, Sophia, and Emily, who had just been brought out of the hospital. They were all tied up and thrown on the ground. Lucas's mother and Sophia had already fainted. Emily was still alive, but her wounds were bleeding profusely. Anderson was on the phone. Find someone with the last name Smith, then replace his internal organs with those of a pig. Also, pull up the surveillance from the birthday banquet that day. Everyone who discussed Jessica must be found. I want them all to suffer," Emily said with a mocking laugh. "Anderson really has a presence. Those who don't know might think you're particularly invested in Jessica. I really don't know who insulted Jessica as a dishonorable person in front of all the guests 3 years ago. That scene was truly spectacular. I still remember it to this day. I even often think about it in my dreams." Anderson's expression was grim. He took the knife from his subordinate. Without hesitation, he stabbed Emily once. "If it weren't for you harming Jessica, I wouldn't have misunderstood her." Misunderstanding. Emily seemed to find it amusing. "If you really love her that much, how could you misunderstand her so easily?" Anderson was momentarily speechless. His expression was exceptionally ugly. He stabbed several more times with the knife in his hand. Emily fainted from excessive blood loss. He held a knife stained with blood, standing in front of Lucas. Lucas, very impressive. You actually managed to scheme against me, and even collaborated with Emily to pull off such a stunt. I really want to know. How did she persuade you? It's not another one of those stories about Jessica bullying her, is it? Lucas was taken aback for a moment. He thought to himself, could it really be fabricated? You should know. Although he saw Emily as a lifesaver, the reason he had such animosity towards Jessica back then was indeed because Emily often cried to him about her sister bullying her. Anderson could tell from his expression that he was right. He said sarcastically, if you just did a little research, you would know. Jessica is actually the victim. After Jessica's father became successful through his first wife, he soon took a mistress. As a result, he had Emily, this illegitimate daughter. Later, he even forced his first wife to death and brought the mistress home. In such circumstances, how much better could Emily and her mother have lived? Jessica didn't have her own bedroom. She could only live in the attic. They didn't even let the maid do the dirty work. She does everything. I still have to help Emily with her homework at school. She is also isolated by Emily and her friends. So this is how things are. Lucas finally understood why he misunderstood that the girl was named Emily that day. We could have lived happily together, but you ruined everything. Lucas, it's all your fault. Anderson raised the knife and lunged at him. 1 stab, 2 stabs. Both of them were covered in blood. Lucas felt his life slowly slipping away. This is what death feels like. Fortunately, Jessica was under anesthesia when she passed away. It shouldn't be too painful. Anderson finally stopped. He threw Lucas to the ground as if discarding trash. Then he ordered his men to pour gasoline on the ground. Lucas lay on the ground. Suddenly, he burst into laughter, laughing and coughing up blood. Anderson, do you know, I once asked Jessica if she still hated you. Guess how she answered? She said she hasn't hated you for a long time. Haha, Anderson, you're so smart. You should be able to understand what this means. Anderson stood tall, suddenly feeling a bit shaky. He didn't look back, slowly said to his subordinates, clean this place up. Let them accompany Jessica. Walk out of the villa. Anderson felt suddenly drained of strength. A wave of sadness surged in his heart. He thought Jessica must be very disappointed in him. She would never forgive him. He was still thinking about how to properly apologize to Jessica this time when he returned home, to make amends for the rest of his life. But in the end, he never had the chance again. He didn't expect. Jessica had long stopped hating him. No hate means. Jessica no longer loved him, and it was impossible for her to love him again. He felt an emptiness in his heart. It can never be filled. A surge of anger ignited within him. Those who were gasping for breath desperately moved towards the door. They wanted to find a way to survive. Lucas lay on the ground, staring at the ceiling, talking to himself. Jessica's greatest love when she was alive was me. This means I have won. She will wait for me at the Nape Bridge. I will be able to see her soon. He never expected to open his eyes again, but he discovered that his face and body were covered in burned scars. It looked frightening. Moreover, he quickly realized that he was not in his original world, nor was it the afterlife. It was like a completely new place. He was penniless, claiming to be the heir of the Lucas Group, but everyone treated him like a madman. He could only barely survive under the bridge. One day, he went to the street to beg for money with other homeless people. Suddenly, he saw a familiar figure. Jessica, he called out happily. The girl was stunned. Her gaze was fixed on him. Just one look. He knew Jessica recognized him. Jessica, it's me. I hadn't finished speaking. A man holding a little girl turned around and called out to her. Jessica, let's go. Baby, we're going to be late. We have to go to art class. Jessica glanced at Lucas again. She didn't say anything. She just placed $10 into the bowl in front of him. Then she turned around and left decisively. Lucas didn't know. After she returned to the place where her mother used to live, she gave up her irresponsible father's surname and changed it to her mother's surname. So she was no longer called Jessica, but it's Jessica. Watching Jessica holding the little girl, walking away happily chatting with the man, Lucas felt a sharp pain in his heart. He couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. He finally understood. On the other side of the Nape Bridge, no one will wait for him anymore.